the book of Titus. Well, Titus was a Gentile, uncircumcised believer that Paul again used as a test case as he goes through the Mediterranean world, gathering Gentiles and Jews together into one family. And what better test case could you have? Less provocative, in fact. Could you get more provocative than this, to have an uncircumcised Gentile become a leader in one of these churches? And we've heard of Titus all the way back again in Galatians and 2 Corinthians. Again, a trusted worker with Paul. He, in fact, will be the one to carry the money from the collection of the Gentile churches back to Jerusalem. So a very trusted member of Paul's team, a man dearly loved in every way that we can tell. 1:1, Paul, a bondservant of God and of the apostle of an apostle of Jesus Christ, according to the faith of God's elect. I think this is one of Paul's, and I wouldn't call it invented, but one of Paul's terms to describe not just the Jew, not just the Gentile, not individuals, but this idea that the only reason we're a group, the only reason we're chosen, we're elect, is because we as a group have loyalty to Jesus Christ. And that new idea, in fact, in 1:4, I think you get that same thing. To Titus, a true son in our common faith. Common in the sense that Jew and Gentile are now joining together for the first time in human history, a religion based not on tribal ancestry, but on loyalty to a God. Timothy had been left in Ephesus, remember, from last time. Now and by the way, Titus and Timothy, 1 Timothy, seem to be written about the same time. They're very similar books, as you might have noticed. Timothy was left in Ephesus. Titus was left on that big island of Crete. We learned that in 1:5. For this reason I left you in Crete, that you should set things that are lacking in order and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. So 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus are together called the pastoral letters, quite commonly, because these two men, Timothy and Titus, were literally pastors of the earliest church. And they give us a good sense of what life was like back then in the early church. I mean, and again, talk about a precarious situation that Paul was trying to establish. 1:10, for there are many insubordinate, both idle talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision, whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole households, teaching things which they ought not for the sake of dishonest gain. So, lest we say, oh, it must have been a beautiful, peaceful thing to be part of that early church, I think there were tremendous problems of people who, especially among the Jews, who wanted to use Torah, which had a curse against the Gentile, to really question this whole idea of how in the world are we supposed to share our faith with someone that our very sacred book tells us to avoid. 1:14, not giving heed to Jewish fables. One commentator calls that striving about Torah. Think of how, again, church would have worked. I would have come, we wouldn't have a New Testament to read, so we'd read Torah. The very thing that, again, I as a Gentile would find trouble with and the Jew would find against me. Paul is saying, be careful that you're going to strive about Torah, strive about the law. Well, then you get into, again, we saw this in Timothy's letter, putting leadership into control and authority over the church. Overseers, 1:7, for an overseer must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy. A lot of these on-the-ground kind of moral maturity issues, I think, is so vital to a young church that's trying to establish itself in this setting. Older men, 2:2, that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith. The older women, showing that they were probably in leadership positions. 2, verse 3, the older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children. Again, it becomes so practical. You wonder, why is such practical teaching, loving your children, in the Bible? It's because, again, Gentiles largely have never lived in a religion that cared about moral behavior. And so Paul is really trying to work overtime on the simplicity of that side of things. In 2:11, we have again that just wonderful rendition of the salvation story. The favor of God that brings salvation has appeared to all mankind, again, irrespective of ancestry, teaching us that, and notice how on the ground the all of one's life kind of thing is in play here, denying ungodliness and worldly lusts. We're not just trying to be better people. In denying the gods of the Roman pantheon or whatever we worshipped, in denying them, we are denying the way they wanted us to live. And so Paul is saying, well, listen to it, we should live soberly, righteously, propriety, or just in a proper way, and godly in this present age, because this age again is ruled by these beings. What do we look for? Looking for the blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God. That day of the Lord in the Old Testament is still in play. And the appearing of our Savior Jesus Christ. Now it's called the day of Christ. He has given to Jesus the right, the authority to be the judge of the world, who gave himself for us that he might, here we go with that same language we had in Timothy, that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and, keyword, purify for himself his own special people, zealous of good works. So that idea of redemption or purification, again, notice how close that is to where we are in the story of the ancient world. To become pure means not to get saved, but to be able to approach the God that you worship in service and in sacrifice and in just daily living. So a person, and the reason this is so powerful is because imagine again, if you're living in Crete, you don't have a temple to go to, a Jewish temple. So how are you going to purify yourself in that world? Well, you have Jesus. He is your purification, whether Jew or Gentile, without a temple. And then, of course, this is repeated in 3:5, not by works of righteousness which we have done, that is through Torah observance, but according to his mercy he saved us through the washing of regeneration. So we do see the word salvation there, saving, but again, I take that to mean just a way of being able to be a fully functional person living on this earth without a temple to go to. I am now saved in the sense of my loyalty, but I'm purified, I'm washed because of what Jesus did, using the illustration again of the cross and what happened there. And of course the daily challenge of the early church is living without that New Testament, but only the Torah. You have in 3:9, but avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, contentions, and strivings about Torah, for they are all unprofitable and useless. It's very applicable to our modern situation today, where even the Bible could be used in a church or in a teaching setting to abuse truth. Paul had that same nervousness here, even about Torah.